And welcome back to the channel, guys. If you're new here, my name is Justin, and every day I go out into the ocean to try to find amazing species that you probably have never seen before. I believe that by showing people amazing species that exist in our oceans, it'll inspire us all to work together to try to clean up our rivers and oceans and protect our seas.
There was a time not too long ago.
In this special episode, I am joining Team Seas with Mr. Beast and lots of other creators to raise awareness about the need to clean up our rivers and oceans. So stay tuned. So a few years back, Mr. Beast, Mark Roper, and all them, they did Team Trees, where they ended up raising like $20 million, planting 20 million trees, partially in part because they got a whole bunch of creators making Team Tree videos. And now they just announced they're gonna do Team Seas, which is in my wheelhouse. I mean, there's no way I'm gonna let these guys do Team Seas without me. So for this video, we're all the way on the other side of the world in Philippines, and I'm making this video for two reasons. One, Philippines has some of the most biodiverse ecosystem underwater in the entire world, and you can find more species here than all of the Caribbean or America and whatnot. And the second reason is, in their video, Mr. Beast, Mark Rover, they talked about that a lot of the rivers are what supply all the trash that goes into the ocean. And we have here in Manila, one of the dirtiest rivers in the world. It has tons of trash just flowing into the sea. So I'm here to raise awareness for both. I'm not going to show you guys all the trash. We make videos about that all the time. Doing beach cleanups, getting locals together to pick up trash on the beach and in the ocean. What I want to do today is a positive video where I show you some awesome species underwater that will hopefully inspire more people to take care of our oceans. So gear is ready. My dive buddies, they're all ready to go. They're gonna help me find some critters today. Let's get out in the ocean and see what we can find in one single dive. Let's go.
The first guy we're running into today is this little tiny leaf sheep. Of course, that's its nickname, leaf sheep. But what it is a little tiny nudibranch that lives on the top of this leaf, out in the middle of the sand. A nudibranch is basically a snail without a shell. And they're really, really colorful down here because of the huge variety of species. Here's another leaf sheep, but this guy was actually in the sand, slithering along in between leaves. It's pretty rare to find him not on the leaf, but this guy was checking out a new property. As you can see, he's a lot more colorful than the last one. And these guys are pretty tiny, about 3 millimeters long. And then I ran into this flatworm. These guys are so colorful and awesome with great little patterns. There's so many species of nudibranch and flatworms in the Philippines that I like to film them all because they're all unique and quite cool looking. Now these guys have an eye spot on the back of their head that has multiple eyes, and they like to slither around just looking for food or mates. And they're super photogenic, if you ask me. Since we're on the subject, here's another type of sea slug. And this one is actually called a sea hare. They kind of look like bunnies. Or maybe a cow. Maybe a little tiny cow. This guy's so tiny, about 10 millimeters long. And they're quite common, actually. Here's another nudie break, and it was the biggest one of the day, probably about 2 centimeters long. Quite huge, but you can see from all the varieties that I've seen so far today, these guys come in a lot of different colors and shapes and sizes. You can tell why they're an underwater videographer's favorite subject. And believe it or not, this is also a nudie break, and one of the more unique ones I've ever found. This is a Eubrachus species, and if you look really close, you can see his antennae on the front there, or, well, technically they're called rhinophores, but I like the antenna because it looks like an alien. And their bodies are almost completely opaque, and you can see their guts. Right next to that nudie break, I looked over, and there was actually a seahorse staring at me. I don't see these very often, so I had to film him a little bit. But these guys are sensitive to light, so I didn't want to hurt his eyes. They don't have eyelids. And down in the bottom of the sand, I ran into my first crab of the day. This guy was so tiny yet so hilarious looking that I just had to show you guys. I have no idea what species this is, but I think we're gonna see a lot of crabs and shrimp on this dive, just like most dives here in the Philippines. But then I ran into this frogfish, and he was actually using his lure right there, you can see on the front, and trying to attract a fish so he could eat it. Frogfish are so hilarious. There's about 13 different species in Philippines. And then here's the next shrimp of the day. This is a little tiger shrimp, and quite rare for me. I don't see these guys very often, maybe once a month. But as you can see, they're one of the most unique and cool looking shrimp species there is. I bet they're even popular in the aquarium trade just because how cool they are. Now I don't know how many hundreds or thousands of species of crustaceans there are just here in the Philippines. One day I'd love to do a survey and find out. I just know there's tons of them, and usually they're too shy to film. Here's one of my absolute favorite crabs. It's called a candy crab. His body is about the size of a dime. If a dime was like really round and fat. And they hang out on these soft corals, blending in perfectly. And they're just such an awesome, awesome creature. I think you can see why we spend a little bit of time with these guys when we actually find them. Because they're just so colorful and so cool looking. And then check this out. It's a little tiny algae shrimp, or sometimes called a hairy shrimp. Now this guy is tiny. It's as tiny as the littlest nudie break that I found earlier. About 3 millimeters long or less. So this guy is so small that usually they're my nemesis. They're impossible to film. They jump around really fast and everything. But this guy was lazy and cooperative. He was just sitting on a leaf and they let me film him. He was an awesome little guy. Now guess what this is? One of my favorite eels ever. It's a ribbon eel, and these guys are super photogenic when they come out of the hole, because the way they swim is like a ribbon through the water. But even when they're stuck in their hole, which is usually how you find them, they're really unique. There's no other snake or eel that looks like this guy, and it's always a pleasure to find them.
So thank you guys so much for watching. And if you want to donate to Team Seas, every dollar they make, they're going to take 1 pound out of the ocean or the rivers. And the goal is 30 million pounds. So the link will be down in the description below. But don't forget to subscribe to this channel, because in the next episode, my dive buddy and I are helping to plant some artificial reef here in the Philippines. So thank you for watching. I'll see you on the next one.